Hello, everybody. Justin Stivers. Thank you guys for tuning in for another episode of the Stivers Show. Very excited about my guest today, Yana Feldman, attorney at Yana Feldman Associates. She is a dear friend and a colleague, and we've had the opportunity to work on some cases, referrals, and whatnot. She's in New York and does estate planning, elder law, some probate, Medicaid, asset protection work. And so I wanted to have her on because, obviously New York is sort of the epicenter, or one of the epicenters of this whole COVID situation. And so we were talking, a little bit before we started filming about, everything that's going on, signing estate plans, the importance of people having stuff in place. But we'll get into that. But Yana, glad to have you on. Good to see you.
Thank you so much, Justin. I am glad to be here.
How's Brooklyn?
Brooklyn's quiet. We are in stage 1, which means that some very limited businesses are operating, construction, curbside pickup of retail. People are, still a little nervous, still a little apprehensive. And, it's been this way for a while. And unfortunately, it will probably remain this way for a while. This is our current brave new world that we're in. So we're trying to hold down the fort and help people who are dealing with losses due to COVID or other natural causes, and also helping people plan, because it's a scary situation when you don't know what's going on, and whatever you can do to know that at least this one aspect is sort of sorted, and I know what I can anticipate if that happens, I think makes people feel a lot better.
Well, I can't I can't imagine Brooklyn being quiet. So it must be a little creepy. Before we get into the kind of the planning and all that, I always I know I kind of introduced you a little bit, but if you don't share, who are you, what'd you do, how'd you get into it, and stuff like that.
Oh, sure. So I grew up in and around New York City, and I went to law school down in Tulane in New Orleans.
Nice.
And I really enjoyed my, wills and trust class. And I thought, wow, this is so interesting. You are basically, getting insights into all of these different families and their dynamics. And I sort of went about my business and never expected that, that would happen. I was going to prosecute offenders of sexual predators. I had a very career path when I went to law school. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And then 9/11 happened. And I had been in the process of, the interview process, hopefully getting hired as an assistant district attorney in Kings County, which is Brooklyn in New York City. And they said, hey guys, why don't you sit tight and maybe next year we can take you on. And I started to sort of scramble around and figure out what I was going to do. And I met someone who was a solo practitioner. She did guardianship work. And I worked with her for a number of years. And guardianship work for elders is a lot like child custody in a sense. It's very emotional. It's very crisis-based. There's abuse, there's allegations. And I sort of looked at it and said, what could prevent, getting to this point? And that is really where my interest in estate planning came from. And, I see myself serving the clients sort of through the spectrum of their life. So we do planning for younger families. We do planning for retirees where it starts to become elder law, long-term care planning or Medicaid planning, Medicaid applications. And for people that pass, we do estate administration. So that's how I got into it. And I've been living in Brooklyn for a while now with my husband, who also has a small practice of architecture, not law. And I have 2 5-year-old daughters.
So you've been cooped up and you're ready to get out.
I am so ready to get out. But I'm going to be moderate and safe and control the curve.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
Well,
me.
that's awesome. That's all. I didn't know you went to Tulane. Very cool. So estate planning in general, again, a lot of people probably watching familiar, but it's when you think estate planning, when you think of the type of work you do, generally you think wills, a trust, power of attorney, what happens to your stuff after you pass away, right? So legacy and all of that. I know that a lot of I feel like everybody intuitively, they even say this. They're like, I know I need to do a will. I don't know why people say that. I don't know why. Like I have clients who say it's like, I know I need to do a will. Like everyone just knows that they need to do a will or they need to do a trust, but the vast majority of people do not, right? The vast majority. I mean, my practice is built on people who don't do any of that, right, or don't do it correctly. So I'm curious though, with everything that's happened, have you sensed a sense of urgency amongst people in New York that they're like, oh wow, literally there could be a pandemic and we could die, like we should get this? Or is it still kind of like, we know we need to do it, but we're not ready yet? Like, have you noticed a shift at all? Or
Absolutely. Absolutely. And before you started recording today, we were talking about, in the past, I've always wanted to market to my peers. If you study marketing, they talk about, who's your avatar, who's the client that you could serve. And it started as a joke, but it's really true that my avatar is me or my mom, right? Because I'm a professional business owner, I own my home, I have small children, I have things to lose, I have things to protect, I, have disposable income, I, worry about trying to do the best thing for my family. I thought that I would be an amazing avatar. And for years, I tried to market to my peers. I had mominars. I tried hosting, events, for people with their children to come to, with entertainment, events at preschools. And it just went nowhere, to the point where I literally took it out of my business plan. I'll do the handful that come my way, and I'm just not going to try to go after this business. And that has by far and away been the number one clients that I've had over the last 3 months. And it's a combination of a few things, right? So first of all, yes, there is a pandemic. People that were healthy are getting sick. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what this disease is. Number two, people are home. So, and I have all of my consultations over Zoom or the phone. And I, especially since I wasn't keeping regular office hours, since I had my kids at home,
right.
I was perfectly happy doing a Zoom call at 9 p.m. And that way, my kids are in bed, it's a little quieter, their kids are in bed. So that made it easy. Also, New York State was, I think, one of the fastest adapters of virtual notarization and virtual witnessing. So I can complete any sort of estate plan, without ever meeting a client at this point. They're not permanent changes to New York law. They're executive orders for a set period of time, but they keep being extended. And my colleagues do think that this may become permanent because, this may be very long-term. So yes, I'm definitely seeing a sense of urgency. I did a marketing campaign on Facebook where I prepared a document called a designation of standby guardianship. And this is a document that basically says, if I get taken to the hospital or if I get hit by a bus, this is who takes my kid home tonight. It's not permanent. It's only good for 60 days. You still have to go to court. But as a parent, even a parent who knows the process and understands what's going to happen, there's always this fear. If something happens, is some mean social worker that works for the police department going to show up and take my kids somewhere?
Right.
Or are my parents going to be able to take them? So people were really excited to do that. I just provided that as a free resource. And versus my typical clients who usually skew older, they're retired or headed towards retirement, looking to do long-term care planning, potentially, Medicaid planning if they might need it in the future, preserve their assets, etc. They're kind of sitting tight. They're just starting to come out of the woodwork, but they didn't even want to think about virtual planning. They were just like, we're staying home. We're not doing anything. We've put our life on pause. But people with young children weren't really able to do that. So that was the big shift that I saw.
I want to go back to the first thing you said, which why do you think your avatar, which was you, why do you think they weren't interested in the beginning?
They weren't not interested. They just let them, it wasn't, there was no urgency.
Right.
Yeah, theoretically I should do an estate plan. Yeah, theoretically I'm a professional and I know I should go to another professional to do this, not, legal Zoom. Oh, that's how much it costs. Well, we are planning to book a vacation and that's kind of a chunk. Like, it's not that they can't afford it, but when they, sort of look at it, they're like, oh, do I really want to think this money now? You're like, oh, you want me to come to your office during business hours, but I have to work and childcare and, can I meet you at 7 p.m.? Oh, you want to get home and put your kids to bed? Oh, yeah. I have to go home and put my kids to bed. Weekends are the only thing that I managed to keep, mostly off limits in my professional life. So it wasn't that they weren't interested or they didn't want to do it. It was just on their list, right? Like, we all have lists, and every time we rewrite them, the same things show up on our lists. But if there's no urgency around it, people that are older, they've lost friends, someone had a heart attack, someone had cancer, or they've seen their peers, in their, 50s, 60s, dealing with the loss of their parents at 80, 90, and they want to spare their family that pain and delay an expense. I think that's it.
Well, as you were thinking, I was in my head, like, putting myself in their shoes, and I'm like, do I go on a Caribbean trip, or do I get like the stack of Liam documents that is like, I don't feel like I get any benefit from it. I know I do. I think maybe lawyers just haven't done a good enough job. It's kind of like insurance, right? Like car insurance, or, it's like, at some point you will get in an accident. But we're more like predisposed to like paying, whatever that monthly car insurance is, even though, over time, like, I guess if you get in one accident, it pays for itself, but kind of the same thing with, having an estate plan in place, but people, I don't know.
Well, but it's just, in a way, it's kind of like term insurance, right? When I was pregnant with my kids, I said, oh no, I better get some insurance. And I talked to some people and I said, this is not, and some people tried to sell me insurance as an investment, as a retirement vehicle. I'm like, no. This is insurance. Right now, what I'm looking for is insurance. I want to know that if I get hit by that bus, someone's going to write a check.
Right.
And estate planning is like that too. But except at some point you're definitely going to die.
You will need it. There's no way around that. You will need it. Have you seen, this is, not as light, but have you seen a lot of, because I know you do probate like what I do, and I've had a couple cases here where, people directly related to COVID. Are you seeing that now, or you think that's going to be?
Oh, for sure. I've had a number of existing clients that passed away due to COVID. And I have a number of new families as clients who lost a loved one due to COVID, as well as people that died of other, reasons. And here's the thing, the people that had trusts, it was fine. we didn't need to get the courts involved. I know in Florida you have to like file trusts or do something with trusts. I leave that to you to handle for my clients. But, you know, if you, in New York, you don't have to do anything. So if, you know, your asset is in a trust, you just bring a death certificate, which took some time during the height of the pandemic, actually. But you just bring the death certificate to the bank, or, you know, change the deed. You know, it's all done. It's all doable. And the people that didn't have trusts, the people that had estate plans, but they were will-based, we can't do anything. The courts have just recently started to accept filings, but I haven't had a single case where letters were issued. And they're only taking cases that are complete, that don't require a citation date. So for those of your listeners that don't practice in probate in New York, what that means very briefly is if everyone that is entitled to inherit, if the person had not had a will, so, you know, whatever the statute in New York says, these are the people that would inherit, they're all entitled to an opportunity to object to the will. So if they sign waivers that we know there's a will, we know Joe is named as the executor in the will, and we're all cool with that, I'm signing this waiver. If we get those from everyone that would have inherited, then the court will take it on submission and eventually issue letters. But if there's one person in there, you know, who won't sign a waiver, then the court says we're going to set a citation date, and that person has to be served and given notice and have their opportunity to come to court. So since that can't happen, and that might not happen for like a year, and most of the time these folks are pro se litigants, they're not represented by an attorney. Oftentimes they're not very sophisticated. So the court said, you know, you can't serve them and make them show up to a Zoom, you know, court date. So
they're letting us do that. They're letting us serve them and go to a Zoom, but it's interesting. I want to touch on one other thing before because I know we're running kind of low on time. But so you mentioned that the mobile notary, or not mobile, maybe mobile notary, virtual notary, witnesses and all of that, which unfortunately we don't have all of that yet in Florida. But do you think that's, I know you said it's not permanent, but you know, I've always felt that the whole will system is a pretty outdated system, because it's like they're not really recorded anywhere, at least here. It's like, so if you lose it, you lost it. And if you don't have a copy, if you don't have the original, you got to find the witnesses. And like the will was probably signed like 30 years ago. So like, who knows where the witnesses are? That part is maybe just like an aside. But do you think that going forward, that the laws are kind of going to change and make it a lot more easy for people to, because again, you got to go to the attorney's office. You got to have a notary there. You got to have 2 witnesses there. It's like, it's kind of a process.
Well, look, it is a process, and I have mixed feelings about it. And I think partially it's because my background was straight elder law. And I see a lot of opportunities for undue influence and fraud using the system. I think it would have to be very carefully developed, because right now, it's the Wild West. Nobody really knows how we're supposed to do it. You know, I'm on the, executive committee of, our section at the state bar. And, you know, we've had, calls and meetings and discussions over email, and there have been CLEs and best practices. And if I, talk to 10 colleagues who I respect and look up to as excellent, legal practitioners, they will have 10 different ways of doing this remote notarization and will execution. So, it takes a lot of work, for someone like you and me, having them do it as an e-signature, might be fine, but I have to take into account, people that are, I had a consultation yesterday with a lady who is 79 years old, totally not tech savvy. So it was on the phone, no video. So I don't know who was in the room with her.
Right.
I'm just saying this as an example. And I spoke to her because a family member said she wanted a power of attorney. And I explained to her what a power of attorney was and what it would do. And that was not at all what she wanted. But not everyone would take the time to make sure that this person really truly understands what's going on. So
Yeah.
I can't give you a short answer.
Loaded question. No, I think it's interesting. I mean, I agree. There's definitely possibility for duress or undue influence or fraud or all of that. Even electronic signatures. Like you think you have their email, but like it could be somebody else. You never. So it's interesting. But I'm curious to see. I mean, certainly there will be some changes out of this. I'm curious.
Of course there will. And, I think there's a middle road, where maybe we go back to the old system as a default, but have, an opportunity with enough checks and balances to accommodate people that have mobility issues or aren't able to get to their lawyer's office.
Yeah.
Right now, anyone I know who practices real estate law or any real estate agents or brokers, at the bottom of every email, it always says, don't trust this email for wire information. Call my office at the number you already have. So.
Right. Yeah, we might be adding those. Well, I know we're running up on time. So last question that I have for you is, what suggestions do you have or what do you want to tell, people who maybe to that professional, who finds that I don't want to spend the money on it right now. And I think this is a great opportunity for people to, yes, we are offering this service. Yes, we get paid for it, but it's not like, it's a genuine need, right? Like there's a genuine need and the repercussions for not having it are big. So what would you say to that person that's maybe, hesitant or trying to do it themselves or something?
So, there are some things that you can absolutely do by yourself. There are some things that if you mess it up and you try to fix it, you can call in a professional and get the desired result at the end. Unfortunately, with estate planning, you don't know that you messed it up until you're already gone and your family is suffering from the repercussions. So I think the important thing to keep in mind is, who are you trying to protect? Are they fully independent and functional? I had a gentleman come in, his two heirs were 40-something-year-old nieces that had their own money and career and etc. And he said, I don't really care about saving them time and money. They're inheriting my house. They can figure it out for themselves. And you know what? Fine. But, do you have children? Do you have elderly parents that rely on you? Are there other people in your life that if there wasn't access to your assets would suffer? I think those people really have to realize that there is a sense of urgency because folks that passed away at the end of March, their families that relied on them still haven't been able to access their assets. There's people that are going to inherit, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars that are going to food pantries because they don't have any money.
Yeah.
So who's relying on you? That's really what I would urge people to think about. That one, if you make a mistake, it's not fixable. And two, right. Who's relying on you?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, Yana, I appreciate your time. Stay safe up there. Hopefully you can get outside sooner than later.
Thank you so much. And, I'm usually in Miami a lot more than I have been for the last
tough now. Travel's tough now.
So, I look forward to visiting and you stay safe too.
Thank you. I appreciate it, guys. And we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.